Hello everyone, I'm Eric. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and my areas of recovery are drug, alcohol, and porn abuse, overeating, depression, anxiety, control issues, anger, and codependency. Before I start, I would like to open us in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity for sharing my testimony that you have presented me with tonight. You have been telling me for a while to do so. I just have been procrastinating for over a year now. I ask that you please keep me strong as I go through this, and that someone will hear something in my story that will provide hope in their situation and lead them to you. Thank you again. Amen. All right. I barely touched on here, actually what all he's done and how much his program really has changed my life. So, if anybody would like to hear anything more after this, please reach out to me. All right. I was born March 3rd, 1988, 2 days before my mother's birthday. My mother always said I was the greatest birthday present ever. I'm the oldest of 5 children. Excuse me. 1 brother and 3 sisters. My brother was 11 months younger than me. My twin sisters are 9 months after him. And 5 years later, my baby sister was born. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was a member of a plumbers union in New York City, which is where I'm from. As far back as I can remember, my thinking and outlook on life was all jacked up. I used to say that I'm from a broken home, but now I understand I am from a family of imperfect sinners that did the absolute best they knew how to do. With the CR steps, along with some really good books, showed and helped me how to truly forgive them and everyone else who had hurt me. My mom, I honestly have only seen drink a handful of times my entire life and never getting drunk. My dad, on the other hand, was a completely different story. The earliest memories I have of him are being afraid of him. He drank usually every night, and more often than not became very physically and verbally abusive. Usually towards my mom, but sometimes towards his kids as well. I recall nights where my mom locked him out because he was getting unreachable, and he kicked the door along with the entire door frame down. He was a very big guy, 500 pounds at his heaviest. Other nights, he knocked down entire walls in our house, flipped the fridge over, and threw the stove one time clear across the kitchen. During these fits of rage, my mother did her best to keep us all safe. Sometimes she was successful, other times we saw and even got caught in the middle of it. One night, all 4 of us got beat for whatever reason, and from that night on, I was the one to hide us all when we heard him coming in, until I knew if he was drinking or not. If he was, we usually fell asleep under the bed or in the cabinets where we were hiding. This, I believe, was the start of my codependency. If we were still awake, sometimes we helped Mom put everything back together after he went to bed. One night, he busted her nose and face to the point she was bleeding pretty bad. I remember it made me so angry, but I didn't know what to do to help or what to do about my anger. School life was not much better. I was made fun of a lot and was known as the poor smelly kid. My obsession with cologne now. Having such a large family made it hard to afford clothes like everyone else wore. In class, I did not talk much to anyone, and I'm pretty sure it was because I was told at a very early age to trust no one and suspect everyone. Because of this, I was labeled as learning disabled and held back a year to help me improve my communication skills. Then the rest of my elementary and middle school, I was in special education classes, which made me feel that much more insecure about myself. Although my mother was a stay-at-home mom, she was not much of a homekeeper. Our house inside and out was always a complete mess, which the kids at school reminded me of daily. She did not cook much, so we ate fast food all the time, which caused most of my family to be extremely overweight. I felt like I was not accepted or safe anywhere. With all the daily chaos going on, it was hard for anyone to notice the sexual abuse that was also going on. Sadly, I was not mentally mature enough to understand that what was really going on was not a good thing. I willingly went along with it at times. This was when I first experienced porn and feeling something other than fear and shame. However, later in life, I started to feel guilty and shameful. All of this happened by age 8. I had major trust issues, and all I really knew about God was that He punished people who did not listen to your parents. We attended church several times, but it always became an issue because my dad was Irish Catholic and my mom is Protestant. And there were always arguments over which type of church to attend. Also, I am left-handed, and I was told that this is the sign of being a child of Satan. Combine that with the running joke in my family that my mom must have some satanic ties because her social security number, New York driver's license, and license plate all had 3 6s in a row, which caused me to honestly believe it was true because of my situation and how my life was going. Lastly, the only time I prayed, I asked God to please save my grandmother who was dying of lung cancer. And when she died a few days later, I really believed that not only was God not listening, He must be against me, and what my family said was true. Okay. In 1996, my dad was involved in a workplace accident that almost killed him. About a month later, my sister Julia was born. After his accident, my dad was unable to move off the mattress we had set up in our living room for months, and my mom had to go back to work. Being that my dad could not move, and my mom was not home, I was taking care of my brother and sisters whenever I was not in school. After he had his accident, my father did not drink again. However, he never sought recovery of any sort. He really believed his only problem was drinking. About 10 months later, when my dad was able to start moving to the point he could go back to work, he needed help because he was so limited in what he could do. So I went from changing diapers, making sandwiches and baby bottles, to learning how to repipe buildings. I was working with him now whenever I was not in school, sometimes working instead of going to school. I was always told that I'm the oldest and I need to set the example for everyone else to follow. So I worked and went to school until I broke my right foot while messing around with my brother when I was 11. My foot would not heal, and then we found out that I had a rare condition in my feet which required surgery in order for it to heal. This is when I first experienced opioid painkillers, and I loved the way they made me feel. After it had finally healed, I was working again anytime I was needed, which was a lot. During this time, I did develop a relationship with my father that I did not have before. Although we grew close, my step work showed me that by helping him so much, this fueled my codependency. A lot of jobs that I was on with him during this time were ran by some sort of organized crime. I do know that some of them were associated with John Gotti. One company he worked for was owned by John's cousin, Richie. Seeing all the nice cars and respect that these people had really caught my attention. I knew these people were gangsters because I was told that they were. One day I looked at my dad and I told him that I wanted to be a gangster, and I really did mean it. I was only like 11 or 12. He told me that no matter what I did in life, just make sure I'm good at it. I must really have reflected this because I was voted most likely to be on The Sopranos in school. And I still have that little plaque. My dad's obsession with the movie Goodfellas and real life mafia members only added to it. I already stated my entire family was overweight. And the school nurse at my brother's school made a comment to my mom about it. My mom got very angry at her, which turned into something that no one saw coming. The nurse contacted social services and filed a child abuse complaint with them. Social services came in and made our lives blank. Heck. They consistently pulled us out of school, ran tests on us, and had us log every meal that we had. My parents fought very hard, and the courts did throw the case out. The effects of this were felt long after, though. And now I was even more insecure about my weight and my eating habits. This is the main reason, followed by 9/11, that we left New York for North Carolina. The whole family agreed that we needed a fresh start at life. Once here, I realized that it was much different here than it was in New York, and that I really did not fit in. Fuquay was a much different place when I moved here. Very different. Shortly after getting here, the dysfunction and verbal and emotional abuse picked back up, but worse. I said earlier my dad never sought recovery of any sort, so his underlying issues that caused his drinking, which I still don't know what they are or were, along with his alcoholic behavior, showed right back up. He did not like it here, and he made it known to us through his anger. He blamed my mom for us having to move here and reminded us almost daily that we did not belong here. The constant reminders at home, along with my low self-esteem, led me to choose the outcasts and the ones who got in trouble a lot as my friends. My high school years were filled with a lot of parties, fighting, drinking, and drugs of all kinds. The effects of the drugs and alcohol provided me with the escape I was looking for. I ended up getting kicked out of Fuquay for fighting and going to another school only to return to Fuquay and graduate with pretty good grades. I've always done well in school with hardly any effort. After starting school here, I was no longer labeled learning disabled and actually took some advanced classes. After high school, I went to college, working towards an associate's in science and eventually transferring to Campbell for pharmaceuticals. However, I dropped out when my dad said he needed help with working the delivery routes that he had. Shortly after, my leg started giving me problems again, and it ended up breaking again. The delivery routes were a lot harder and labor-intensive than they sound like they were. Limping around on a broken foot led me to rediscover painkillers, obtaining them from both doctors and off the street. Every doctor I went to had no idea how to fix the issue I was having. So they just gave me pain pills and sent me to the next doctor. In 2009, my best friend got shot and killed by a police officer that was called because of a noise complaint. He was playing Lynyrd Skynyrd loud in his car. This loss, combined with the alcohol and drug abuse, then the constant pain in my leg, drove me to the point of trying to take my own life for the first time. After a long night of drinking and smoking crack, I just wanted to end it all. I cut my wrists and was waiting just for the pain to stop. But God had other plans. My brother, who had absolutely no idea where I was, pulled up in his truck and got me to the hospital. After I was out of the hospital, I still felt physical and emotional pain and continued to drink and use daily. During this time, I racked up a total of 3 DWI charges, all before I was 21. While walking home from my first one, I was offered a ride from a stranger, which I took. I do remember having a soda with me. When I got in the car, I asked the guy driving if I could use his phone. While I was on the phone, he must have put something in my drink, because I do remember feeling weird after I drank some. And the next morning, I remember waking up the next day in a motel room with evidence and the feeling that I was assaulted. One of the worst feelings in my life. After that, I started having what my doctor called flashbacks of things that may or may not have happened that night, which literally drove me crazy. I was not sleeping from the stress and anxiety of it all. I was put on many medications, one of which were benzodiazepines, which are Xanax. I tried to take my own life shortly after all of this because I could hardly sleep due to the flashbacks, and I was just tired of living like this. My second DWI was because I ran from a roadblock on my way to go get more beer. About a month later, I received my third. This one, I was stealing drugs from a street dealer when I was pulled. After jail, I went and checked myself into a detox and was offered a shot at recovery. I went to an Oxford house in Smithfield for 4 months and did great until I had to move out because I could not afford it anymore because of lack of employment. I got involved with the church during my stay here, but left after I felt like the pastor was focusing too much on members giving money to fund a new church parking lot. I moved back to this area and got with someone and went back to life as usual, drinking and using all the time. The mistakes I had made, the constant reminders of my childhood, the sexual abuse, the personal failures, had me severely depressed, which pushed me even deeper into alcohol and drug use. Every time I drank, now I became the same exact person my dad was, and I hated myself because of it. I went back to work with my dad, and I tried to stay above water. I finally found a doctor that said he could fix my leg. I had to have several more surgeries. The last one, I had developed a bad infection, and the pain was still extremely bad. My doctor referred me into a pain management and they put me on fentanyl. I got severely addicted to it, and after a few years, I was running out of a 30-day supply in 6 days. I did not know what to do to stop. On top of that, I would start and stop all my other mental health medications, which made me a ticking time bomb. I could not and did not want to live like this anymore. I attempted suicide for a third time, and only by the grace of God I survived, because the doctor said if I got to the hospital 30 minutes later, I would have been gone. I had saved up a bunch of my medications, and after a big fight with my girlfriend over my drinking and using, I took 3 entire bottles of sedatives. When I woke up from my coma, I had no feeling or movement on the entire left side of my body. I was put into a mental hospital, Holly Hill, and during this day, I taught myself how to walk again, using the handrails and a wheelchair to catch me when I fell. Nobody helped me. And to this day, I still don't have feeling in my first 2 toes. After I was out, I went right back to life as usual. Went right back to life as it was. My addiction continued. One day, after I ran out of my opioids, I finally said enough is enough, and I went for help again. This time, I was enrolling in a medicated treatment program that tapers you off of opioids. I was told that if I wanted the medical treatment, I would have to get off my Xanax, which I did. However, I was not told that one of the side effects from stopping them abruptly was seizures, which I started having shortly after I stopped taking them. The pain from all that drove me further into a depression, which I coped with by drinking. This vicious cycle just keeps getting worse. I lost my job, my home, and the last little bit of confidence in myself. I wanted a do-over, a complete new start. I had absolutely nothing, so I could start over anywhere I wanted to. I jumped into another relationship. I moved to Fayetteville. I got a job. I started a side business. And me and her became pretty serious and actually getting engaged. We talked about and tried to start our own family and got pregnant twice, but lost both. She also blamed me for it. This caused me to honestly believe I was cursed. I started drinking every second of every day, but I knew I needed help. I reached out several times to treatment centers in the Fayetteville area, but I was told that my 225 a week drinking habit was not bad enough to receive inpatient help because I didn't black out more than 5 days a week. Then I got the help whether I wanted it or not from Cumberland County Jail. When I got out of jail, I decided to go into an intensive inpatient treatment program. My grandfather and father were both sick with cancer at the time. My dad did not want me to go because he wanted me to remodel his house so he could sell it so my mom could move into another house payment-free after he passed. He told me while I was getting out of the car at the rehab, this is the most selfish thing I had ever done to my family. And I believed him. I was in the rehab when my grandfather passed. A few weeks later, I found out my dad's time to live went from 12 to 18 months down to 3 to 6. I was in so much emotional pain from everything taking place, and my addiction was right there to comfort me through it. This time, her name was methamphetamine. My mom and I were taking care of my dad at the house in the apartment I live in now while he was sick. I came home from work one day, and my dad was on the floor, unable to get up. I could not get him up no matter how hard I tried. And he would not allow anyone else in the room other than me and my mom. I could not deal with it, so I left and I went on a binge. On September 3rd, 2018, I was stranded at a dope house because my car got stolen while I was in the bathroom and my phone rang. My father was gone. I tried to get up with the guy who stole my car and did not have much luck getting it back until a day later. So being that I was not there for my family during our traumatic loss, I dealt with it how I usually do. I showed up to his funeral completely out of my mind and embarrassed myself and my entire family. I only remember parts of it. I had been up for 2 days straight on meth and drank a fifth of some cheap bourbon before I went in. After the funeral, I ran from my problems and my family again on a meth binge. I tried hard to pull it all together and get a job, especially because I was on probation now with an ankle monitor, and I had to have one. The drugs kept getting in the way, though. After a few months passed since his funeral, my brother was released from prison after his latest meth lab bust. We grew apart as we got older, mostly because he stole so much stuff from me during his addiction. I can honestly say that we had a different connection this time, and even though we were both on drugs, we did end up forming a bond. He's actually the one who told me to pray for the first time. 1 month exactly after he was released from prison, we got into a bad fight. He and his girlfriend were also fighting. I said some things that I really wish I could take back. A few hours after they left, their car crashed into a pole, and my brother passed away. All this took place in a 9-month time span. I was broken, empty, hopeless, helpless, and not only blamed God, but I cursed him too. I lasted about another month and a half before probation got a hold of me. And I'm honestly glad that they did. During my last day in jail, God kept revealing himself to me through other inmates. One day this guy just walked up, hit me on the shoulder, and said Ephesians 4. I didn't even know what he was talking about. But I was not listening close enough, or I just didn't care to listen. When I got out, I went back to the same exact lifestyle, but this time something was different. God was working things out for me in a way that's kind of hard to explain. I was wanting to do the right thing, but my lifestyle kept me doing the wrong thing. Instead of letting me fall, he was correcting me, conflicting my thoughts, and helping me learn how to live life the right way. When I describe it in detail, what he did and how he did it to people I knew, they said that it was definitely the drugs, because that's how He works. That's all I can say. But I know the difference between what the drugs did and what he was helping me do. Then one day, I was completely out of my mind, and I really wanted to find help again. I decided I would go to St. Bernadette's Church around the corner, where I knew someone that worked there. On my way, though, I was walking. I got lost, even though I knew exactly where I was. I grew up here. I literally stumbled past the Celebrate Recovery sign in the parking lot and thought it was like an AA celebration or something, because I had never heard of it. I stood outside in the parking lot. I know I looked completely crazy. And I had this gentle voice telling me, to just go inside. I finally convinced myself to go inside, and I was going to ask somebody for a cigarette and a ride to the church down the road. I remember hearing kids playing and laughing at the ball field next door, and it was so nice because I was only used to hearing bad things. When I walked in, there was a testimony playing, and the guy speaking was with the church that I used to attend when I lived in Smithfield. And his story literally touched my soul. It was so close to what mine was. I felt at home, welcomed, and a relief like I have never felt. I know I looked crazy because I literally thought that I was being set up somehow, and I was looking over my shoulder every second. And like Jim had told me, I was being set up, just not the way I thought. I started attending every Thursday night. I got involved in church, and I even started a step study. In the other programs I had attended, I had never been able to make it through my fourth step, and I had attempted it a lot in the other programs. When I overcame that step and faced all my past issues, hurts, and regrets, it was like the biggest weight was lifted, and I felt amazing. God kept working when I followed his instruction. I had to do that. When I got in his word, and I actually started to work the program. Within a year, he helped me clear up all my pending court cases, get through a bankruptcy, restore my credit, work on getting my license back, and my hearing is next Thursday, restore all the relationships with my mother and sisters, which was not an overnight thing. This took time. Amongst many other relationships that I would never in a million years think would have been restored. He lined up opportunities that put me in jobs that taught me how to eat right, and then how to cook. He showed me who he really is and what he stands for, and led me to a church that was the exact right fit for me. Then when COVID hit, I strayed away from the program. I slowly fell back into old thought patterns and behaviors, and I did relapse, but I got right back on track, and I'll have 2 years clean from drugs and alcohol June 25th. Thank you. I fully completed all 12 steps my second time around. Prior to COVID, I had only made it to 6. God continues to reveal things to me each day. I could literally talk all night in detail on what he has done in my life. He knew that he made me a hands-on person and helped me to literally live out my step work, because I didn't get the whole writing thing at first. As for the future, I know that there will be both good times and trying times. But I am confident that if I can continue to do the right thing in all situations, do my best to live the way God wants me to, live out the 12 steps to the best of my ability, and reach out to others and seek Him daily with all my heart and mind, I will be fine. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds." 1 Corinthians 13:11 says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I responded like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways." God, through Celebrate Recovery, and everybody here, helped me transform my mind, which showed me, as I reflect back my whole life, I acted and responded to all the problems and trials in my life like a child, instead of dealing with them and learning how to deal with them properly. Celebrate Recovery's 12 steps showed me how to deal with my problems properly, and how to use the pain that they caused to provide help and hope to others. And God says that makes me a man. All right. Thank you.